Hey everyone, it's John Corella, one of the co-creators and executive producer of Dance Moms. Happy Pride, everyone. Hope it's been a safe one, a fun one, a meaningful one. We still have a couple more weeks, and I'm so happy I was able to have Sharon Rocky Roggio on, who directed the movie 1946. And it's a documentary about when the word homosexual was put into the Bible in 1946. So sit back, listen, and you get a lot of knowledge and a lot of healing. So here we have the director of 1946, the movie, Sharon Rocky Roggio. Well, welcome back, listeners, you dancers, actors, Dance Moms fans, and of course, you LGBTQ community that intersects so much with the dance community. This is probably the most meaningful podcast I'm going to be doing so far. And it is with the director of 1946, the movie, Sharon Rocky Roggio. And it is this movie, I've talked about it before, even with those of you that are Dance Moms fans, with Minister Dawn, who's a reverend as well, one of the Dance Moms, and just how the word homosexual was put in the Bible in 1946. So Sharon, the director here, is going to give us a lot of wisdom and a lot of healing. So please welcome to the podcast, Sharon.
Hey, John. Hey, everyone. Hey. How you doing?
Good. How are you? I love, first of all, where can we get this shirt, 1946? Because I love it.
Yeah, sometimes we have them when we're on the road, but not usually because it's hard to carry inventory. But you can get them on our website, 1946themovie.com. There's a merch link and there's tons of stuff. But it's a great little conversation starter. You know, it's like, what's 1946? And some of them say, like, ask me about 1946 or, you know, things like that.
So what's your elevate when people have asked you, what is 1946? What do you say?
Well, it really depends kind of where you are, and it depends on reading the room, because sometimes, you know, talking about these things, and specifically in America, you never know who is anti-LGBTQ and or then thinks being gay is a sin and might have a negative reaction. So it really depends on where I'm at. But most of the time, my elevator pitch for the movie is 1946 is a documentary film about the first time the word homosexual appeared in the Bible. Spoiler alert, it was 1946. And we have the evidence that it was a mistranslation. And so we examine how, when we use or misuse text, how it applies in our real lives, in a real application as we see it play out in our world. But then also it asks the question, who did this and why? And was it a mistranslation? And we see through the notes that the translation team did update the translation. They understood the difference between a group of people or an act that has a consequence, that has a victim or has these negative connotations behind it, which we get into in the film. It's a little heady, but amongst it being an academic journalistic approach, it does show those real applications and lands with some humanity and humility and journey film. I don't know. We've been kind of compared to the Da Vinci Code of somebody published in one of the articles that it's kind of like the documentary Da Vinci Code. I'll take it, you know, so come on us with this political journey, but also real issue.
And it's your journey because you're a part of it through all of it. So it is.
Yes. That's kind of an accident. So, you know, my story is unique to me, but it's not, unfortunately, unique in this scenario. And I grew up in the church. My dad's a minister, so he is in the film as well. He does not believe that he's not convinced. He believes being gay is a sin. And so I felt compelled to tell this story because I knew it could help me in my walk with my non-affirming parents. And we were looking as producers and other producers in the film, et cetera, how to play out, to showcase, you know, who would be that example that we can put next to the academics and the research that we're going through and show how it affects our lives. And so we interviewed several different people, but once my dad showed up, we knew that would be the storyline. We I've known my dad my whole life, so we knew the conversations we would have. We knew where it would go. We knew what my dad was going to say. To a degree, there's always some elements of surprise while making a documentary film. And so then my dad and I had to come to a decision on whether or not to revisit those painful moments. But it afforded us an example to really showcase, for my dad, he would say, the takeaway would be love your child, stay in relationship, even if you don't agree. And I would say, that's amazing, but I agree with being in relationship. And that's one of the through lines of the film. How are we disagreeing with one another? And how are we doing relationship? And it is painful and it's different for everyone. Um, but yeah, so I'm just grateful he was a part of the film. And, I don't
Well,
know.
and I think, I have similar parents. I grew up in the church, in the Evangelical church. Did you grow up Evangelical or was it a different denomination?
Yes, definitely Evangelical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we come with a lot of, and those of you who aren't gay or in the community, the LGBTQ community, my neighbor, she has a lot of to unpack growing up in the purity culture as a straight woman. So there is usually a lot that comes with it. But so we all have, I think the viewers have a dad similar to you. I mean, at least I do,
Yeah. And what I was going to say is, we're not going to change everybody's mind. That's one of the takeaways with it showing this example, and that's okay. I mean, it's a real painful, not a Hollywood ending, but we still have a hopeful ending where enough people will recognize this information and move with us. And so, if you do have a parent out there or someone who's just not moving or might not even see the film, they might not even be open to these
Yeah.
conversations.
I feel people are afraid of the film. At
Yeah.
least the ones I will mention it to that are anti, because
Yeah.
they know it's going to rock their system, their mind. And, we've had to do that our whole life. Our mind was deconstructed when we knew we were gay. So we had to go seek and find.
100%. Absolutely. We've been doing this for a long time as queer people, especially in the church. You do look at things differently and you start to question and you start to really pull back the layers. And to that end, also with me as the producer of the film and the other producers, we wanted to make sure that we didn't necessarily pull the rug out from underneath anyone, laying this out with empathy and grace and really just dealing with the facts. Let's just deal with the Bible was mistranslated. That's an indisputable fact. But that doesn't mean that the Bible doesn't have wonderful things to offer and, different ways to experience community through this religion that has, not just Christianity. The Bible impacts the three largest religions in the world, and so the takeaway would be, the Bible wasn't written in English. And how are we using or misusing the Bible to treat one another? So we didn't want to vilify the church or vilify the Bible or vilify God. This isn't an attack. And what my opinion is on those things doesn't really matter. Again, we wanted to lead with academics and a journalistic approach, but to get that, just kind of that little pushback of like that aha moment to have it click. And we want people to watch the film, and if we're coming out making a propaganda piece or saying, look how I've been hurt by the church, they're so mean, it's like, I know that's an animation of it, but you know what I'm saying? Like we're not going to get anywhere. And then we're preaching to the choir, and we really need people to absorb this information and to, just take that small step so we can move forward together for full equality for all. This doesn't just impact the LGBTQ community. We see how the Bible is misused against women's rights. We see how it's being misused against reproductive rights in America and all of these different things. And so this is a trickle down effect, which is another story. Maybe that's another chapter for things we're going to be
your
discussing.
Next documentary.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you said trickle down, and you said in the beginning that this was this stuff might get very heady. And to me, the film is very emotional, for me. I think it deals with those issues, but it's a journey from your head to your heart to what damage it's done to myself at times. I'm sure definitely other people, all in the name of this. We are the fortunate ones, the ones that are privileged that got through this somewhat intact, but some people did not. They're not here with us. They killed themselves. They are suffering, have left God completely. So with that, because it is a journey to the heart, and I wanted to do this at the beginning, but I'm going to do, is it okay if I say a little prayer before we go dive deeper into more of this amazing truth?
Go for it.
Okay. Dear God, we just come before you, and I thank you for this time with Sharon, and I thank you for everything that you've revealed to all of us. And I ask for you to guide the listeners and Sharon and I in this conversation to healing, love, and truth. We thank you, Lord. Amen. So I'm going to do this thing. We do, you are a part of, we are talking about 1946, but I know the listeners, I do this thing with each guest to kind of bring you in. So I want to at least do this, even though you don't dance. Well, hey, first of all, did you take dance when you were younger?
No, I never took dance. I never really was very good at dance, I think, but I'm better now that I'm older, and I really don't give two hoots, if I feel like dancing, I will. Maybe there's a couple beers in there, and then I let loose a little. But no, I did choir, and I was definitely musical and did musical theater and things like that. So I guess I had to do dance moves there, but I do
feel they
respect
show
what
a
y'all
piece of
do.
that. Don't they show
Pardon?
a piece of you in musical theater in the documentary?
So I think it's just a clip of me in the yearbook talking about doing vocals. Yeah, definitely.
I remember that. I do remember that. So I ask 4 questions, and I'll go first, and it's to kind of ground us in our heart. It's how are you feeling? Where do you feel it? What color is it? And what is it saying?
Whoa.
So I'll go first, and it's pretty. It can be anything. It's kind of fun. It can be fun. So how am I feeling? I'm feeling grateful for the documentary. Grateful that you're here with me in front. Where do I feel it? I feel it in my heart. What color is it? Ironically, it's black. And I think it's because that sounds weird that gratitude is black, but I think it's because of the shirt and how that pops in your backdrop. And what is it saying? I think I said that, just that I'm grateful for the documentary. So how are you feeling this morning, Sharon?
Oh my goodness, how am I feeling this morning? I'm feeling motivated, and there's a lot of things going on. And with that motivation comes encouragement, because we're branching out to extend this 1946 and utilize the film as a tool for civic engagement as we go on the road to 14 US cities and share the film, but then also show how the Bible's been weaponized against, as we were talking about, countless groups. And so it's a Get Out the Vote campaign for 2024. And we're taking another leap of faith as we're using Quest for Biblical Truth finances and seeking out for help from the community to get us on the road. And so we're going to be meeting so many different people. We're going to be meeting, and we already have, just through the emails. I'm trying to keep up. If you've emailed me in the last week, trust me, I have a draft. It's going to get out today because I'm about 5 days behind. But I'm so encouraged because the community is responding again, and we're going to meet so many different people and be able to impact the lives of thousands on the road. So that's this summer. Where do I feel it?
What's the name of that? Because I saw your post on it. What's the actual name of it so people can?
1946 Road Trip Across America.
Ooh. And what are some of the cities you're going to?
We're going to start in Temecula, California, then go to Phoenix, Oklahoma City, Frisco, Texas, then Houston, Texas, up to Baton Rouge. Then we're going to go to Pensacola, Florida, to Sarasota, to Birmingham, Alabama, to Memphis. Yeah, then we're going to hit Springfield, Missouri. We're trying to fit in Little Rock. We'll see if we can have half the crew fly down to Little Rock and then meet us in Denver to sneak in one more day or split crew somehow and hit another city because we've been invited and that might fit in our schedule. But then we're going to Colorado Springs, Salt Lake City, and Vegas.
So is it what would be, is it a screening? Is it a forum? What exactly is it that's different than going to the movies to see it?
Well, sure. So it will be a screening with a Q&A with me. I will be in attendance. But before the movie begins, we will have a local community speaker in every city address the crowd, letting people know the importance of their voice, but also our collective voice as a community and what we can do to really make a difference through our vote. So it is a Get Out the Vote campaign. It's it's a bipartisan, campaign to just really encourage people to register and think about how and recognize when the Bible's misused and when it's being politicized and when it's doing harm, and give people permission to rethink these things, because we're being told one way and we've been told for so long from our pastors what the Bible says. And it's like, no, that might be what the Bible reads, but this isn't what the Bible says. And so,
I like that. Say that again.
that might be how the Bible reads, but that's not what the Bible says, And so when we really need to start pulling back these layers, because again, the Bible wasn't written in English. And it's like, okay, well, what Bible translation are you reading? Because there's a difference. And then we'll be able to explain those things also. So yes, it is the first hour and a half of the conference. It's like a 4-hour event in each city will be dedicated to those talking points. And then we'll watch the film, do a Q&A, and meet some people, go on to the next city.
Well, now everyone, I'll post in the poster, and I'll do the link underneath in the bio as well.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Of this. And does it cost to get in?
No, they're free. It's free to the community. And so we're going to come out and we want to fill the rooms. We want as many people as possible to come in and really experience this and really make a difference in their community. Then it's an opportunity for people in their local communities to meet one another as well, to again be able to really make a difference in this upcoming election and further elections moving forward on that quest for equality for all.
And it seems as though you're going to places that are definitely more anti-LGBTQ than LA. So what if
they were picked specifically? Yes.
Good, bold and fierce, Sharon.
Yeah,
you
so
always are.
I feel it all over. I feel it in my body. I can feel it tingling through my arms. As you can imagine, this is an all-in endeavor, and but it's good. I need to start moving a little more. Maybe I'll watch a Dance Moms episode and loosen up before I get back into the emails.
Yeah, I'll send you the one to watch that'll motivate you for this. Maybe before they get on stage.
I love it.
Obviously, if I was younger, if I was 16 or 14, I know me, and this was out, I would have wanted to go, but my parents probably wouldn't have allowed me to go. So is that possible for a young teenager to just go by themselves?
That's a really good question. I mean, we don't want to obviously get in between, we wouldn't want to encourage somebody to disobey their parents. All are definitely welcome. I would encourage people to definitely, that's a really interesting question.
Only because I feel that, I've said that, I say this every time I talk about this and to you, that this film saves lives. It has, it will continue, and it always will. And, so to those that are hurting and suffering and want the truth, just to know that this is a safe place that they can go to ask questions and to see the movie.
It is 100%. And so we want people to feel safe and ask those questions and meet us and be able to experience liberation with this research and information. If somebody feels that they might not, maybe they don't want to, maybe they feel they'll be exposing themselves as coming out, or they feel uncomfortable showing up in that space, you can always rent the movie online. It's available on our website, 1946themovie.com. And there's a rent link for virtual screening, and you can just watch it at home. And so
And
it's
is there,
a little safer.
will we see it in the future on Netflix or Hulu or Paramount or anything?
Unfortunately, we don't feel a partnership with any of the streaming platforms. I mean, if somebody knows a connection and you want to call us up, we would love to partner with you. In the meantime, we're working on other things like Amazon Prime, but there are alternative streaming platforms that would provide the film for the community, which we're in talks with right now. So yeah, the goal for 2025 is to make it available for a digital download so people can keep it and watch it as many times as you want, DVD and or streaming platforms. So we're still looking for alternatives. The big guys are putting out their own content and they're not looking at the little guys. And sometimes I think we get kind of pigeonholed too. We're either too gay or too Christian. And isn't that interesting? That's kind of what we experience in the church. And they say you can't be either.
Yep.
But, we're
And
still
I
just looked
experience that
at.
if I go to West Hollywood, I'm too Christian.
Yeah.
But, if I go to Phoenix, I'm too gay. So yeah. And
But
I
I
feel
would
it
encourage
should
that this is
go
a
ahead.
movie for everyone. This doesn't just impact the LGBTQ community. Now, it's a documentary about Christian people who discovered a Christian issue in a Protestant situation that deals with the LGBTQ community. But it's still a documentary that I think is, I'm so proud of our team and the movie that we put together. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. And if you don't, I would love to know why you didn't enjoy it. And I can apply it to the next one. But I'm really proud of
It
the
needs to
film.
be out there on Netflix, on Paramount. It does.
It would be amazing. If anybody has any connections, you can
The
send
main
us an
thing
email.
is because it's gonna, for regardless if it's too gay or too Christian, it's gonna save lives.
Thank you. I
And
appreciate that.
just to give people a little bit of, obviously I want them to watch the movie. You do too, the documentary. But why did they change the word to homosexual?
So the translation committee, now, when Kathy and Ed went into this research to ask that question, they had their own assumptions about the time period, what was going on in the culture, and, they were assuming that it was malice. But what they saw from the translation notes and in the data that was presented from the preserved archives at Yale University was a translation committee that really worked to create a Bible. That was pretty much what the goal was to modernize the King James text and to give us a everyday English speaking Bible. But they wanted to make something as accurate to the original as possible. And they did that. And they actually got slammed for it. For example, they called Mary a young woman as opposed to a virgin. And the conservatives lost their minds because I guess you can't be a young woman and a virgin at the same time. But they're like, you're changing the meaning of this. But again, they have their agenda with complementarianism, man on top, woman on bottom, this whole,
What
and
does that mean? What does that mean?
Complementarianism is a word that was created in the 80s by a group of conservatives that pretty much sealed the stamp during these two processes called the Danville Statement and the Nashville Statement, which is a list of clauses that were put together to make sure that the church gets a handle on what a man is and what a woman is and what their roles are within society and in the church. And the reason why they did that is, women's suffrage, women were starting to get their right to, even have a credit card. Think about this, like kids today listening, I think it was like, I don't know, it was like the 70s or something.
Yeah, the 70s is when a woman could finally get a credit card
without having a man is cosign. That's just, I was born in the 70s. Now I'm dating myself.
I was too.
Yeah. Anyway, I lost my train of thought, but you know what I'm getting at. Yeah.
Okay. So it sounded as though the people that were in charge of it did it, but didn't do it with malice. It was more of they just were trying to modernize it.
They were trying to modernize the text. But what they did, though, is so a homosexual at that time period was associated with a mental illness. It was also associated with a vice, like usually
an addiction.
Yeah, and so, and it wasn't understood, not like we understand it today. And the sodomy laws were still, there. And that's also a whole nother thing. Like which our workbook will get into, like what's the definition of a sodomite, when was it originated, and when did it become a derogatory term towards the LGBTQ community, because it didn't always mean gay sex, and so that's a whole other thing. So what they found from the notes, what Kathy and Ed found from the notes, was there are two Greek words that are in the text. It was 1 Corinthians 6:9-10. That was the first verse to use the word homosexual. And there are two Greek words, malakoi and arsenokoitai. And the malakoi is a passive participant in a same-sex act. But what kind of same-sex act is going on? And so we have to look deeper into the text. And then the arsenokoitai is the active participant in this same-sex act. And so they looked into the culture and they saw homosexuals were engaging in same-sex activity, and it was a vice. And so they just associated with it. Once they got the letters and they were challenged on, no, this is a group of people. What we're talking about in the Bible is an act. The translation committee were able to recognize that and make the change. And so they did update the translation to sexual perverts, which then they later updated it to male prostitute. Then they changed it to something else.
Jeez, they keep changing it.
Now it's illicit sex amongst men, right? So that's the Revised Standard Version, where the English Standard Version will say this is a consensual act amongst men. Well, no, there's a lot more going on there. And so what the film does is show us why we know it's not a homosexual, and to get us again to peel back those layers and think about what's really going on here.
What was the word before, not in the Greek form, but before they changed it from homosexual?
Good question. So in the New King James, or in the King James Version, it was abusers of themselves with mankind.
Wow, I never knew that.
Yeah. And then before that, a lecturer or a
pedophile.
No,
right?
It was never pedophile. So what's going on here is a couple different things. And pederasty is one of those things, which was something that was going on in the ancient world, which was sex with young boys. And that was very common. And so sex in the ancient world wasn't something you used to do with somebody. It was something you used to do to somebody. And so that's why the arsenokoitai was the active participant, because they could, if they were of a certain status in a certain place in society, they could essentially penetrate anything they wanted as long as they were of lesser equal value. And they would do this act to the young boys because they didn't want to devalue the women, because they needed to be virgins when they were married off, probably very young. And so the men were letting out this excess on slaves, on prostitutes, on boys.
Yes.
And so it kind of encompasses this whole thing, at least what we can see from the context of history, the Bible, and the culture. We can make the best guesstimate that they're talking about these things, and not a loving, consensual, same-sex relationship of equal status, because they didn't even understand equal status. Sex was it was an object. And we are way more advanced now. And so if people are using these verses against the LGBTQ community, they either are unaware, and this is a cultural issue that we need to fix through education, or they're using it to structure power, and it fits within their identity politics. And so it's convenient for them. It's easy to say it's them, it's not us. And it has everything to do with power and dominance, and nothing to do with loving thy neighbor and really understanding and seeing, as we know more, are we doing better?
And a loving relationship between two men, and a loving relationship between two women. And there is nothing wrong with being gay or LGBTQ.
The Bible is not talking about that at all.
Yes, it is not talking about that. And the documentary gives great insight and, like you said, data, research on how we get there. But I will ask you, though, because I didn't know all of this going into it, but I always knew there was nothing wrong with me being gay in God's eyes. How did you know that before researching all of this?
It's the same reason why I was always like, wait a minute, a woman can't preach, you know? And so I grew up in a church where women were definitely, you know, I mean, we could run Sunday school. I'm like, oh, thanks. You know what I mean? Like, and another red flag that I noticed growing up was how in the Christian communities, not just my faith community that I grew up in, everyone's doing it wrong. It's like, well, the Methodists are doing this, and the Episcopalians are this, and the Lutherans are this, and we're the evangelicals, and we're, you know, doing it right. But then this evangelical group doesn't believe in this, and this evangelical group believes this a little bit differently. And so, you know, and it's like we can't even agree on our own religion. And then it's still like pointing the finger, and it's like it just didn't feel very Christ-like, which is what I was seeing when I would read the Gospels, you know. And so I just called BS from a really young age, which is why probably like when we start off seeing my representation in the film, it's like I was always perceived as the troublemaker because I would question. But if you think about it, if I had questioned and I was a guy, I probably would have been amplified as a leader.
You would have been a pastor.
I would have been a pastor, right? I would have been a disaster. Could you imagine? I'm so thankful that I'm a lesbian and I'm able to now use my voice to help save, you know, honestly, like finding myself working in this space, working in churches. I never thought I would ever go back to church, let alone be working in church spaces. But I kind of look at this as a way to have a voice for the voiceless, because I know that there are people like you and I who were able to come out of this as a young age and call BS and be able to be okay and deconstruct and be fine. But there are adults who can make up their own mind, but there are kids who are still being brought into these church buildings and being subjected to these ideas. And so I'm going to continue this mission for many people, but I think about them the most, you know, as I'm working around the world. Really, I've been meeting church communities all around the world doing this over the last year and a half. So it's pretty amazing.
Have you met with any parents and kids who have been affected by this and who have had a change of mind?
There have been a lot of examples on the road. Yeah, exactly. And Ed gets messages all the time. Kathy gets messages all the time. And, you know, we usually hear a lot of people who are LGBTQ. And like you said, you always knew that it was okay. But now you have a little bit more affirmation.
Yes.
And we can see them having that switch be flipped. And now the liberation is just incredible. They're like, wow, I never even thought that it wasn't a sin. I was okay with myself, but I never even thought that it wasn't. Now they're like, poof. Well, so that's really cool.
It pulls the plug on the shame.
Yeah,
exactly. At least for me, it did. So speaking of shame, what do you have to say to those that, you know, first of all, this is a podcast that is 18 plus. You know, this is, you know, we're talking about obviously sexuality in this. So, parents, feel free to, you know, listen to this with your children if this is something you want them to hear and they're questioning. But as well, what do you have to say that those are listening that are straight, heterosexual, and we're pulling the plug on them, who then feel a lot of shame for believing what they did, doing what they've done to hurt people, and belonging to churches that have hurt people? How do they get out of that shame and cross over?
Sure. I mean, I think a couple ways would be to engage with LGBTQ people. Maybe, you know, you can tell them what's going on, how you're feeling, and, you know, you're sorry in your heart, and then turn it into listening to their story. Like really listen to your LGBTQIA plus siblings, and then start platforming them, giving them a voice, giving them an opportunity to share their story in a larger setting, maybe through community. You start having group settings, or then you're also able to be brave and stand up as an ally, and be able to call out things. If you're in a public setting and you hear somebody say something that's not very nice towards our community, you can say, well, you know,
here's this movie.
Not true. Yeah.
Go see this movie.
Yeah, exactly. And so it takes you know, you will lose friends and community as an ally. So you have to be prepared for some of that as well, or they're going to look at you funny. I don't know, but
I
those would
feel
be
too,
my
though, that the group that
advice.
by giving all the, thank you for that, by you also giving the research and the data. I mean, my mother and I, we went to Kathy's when you were shooting at the church. We were actually, I can see the back of our heads in it in the movie. But there's so much that goes into it,
Mm,
you know, so much about women, uh, patriarchy,
mhm.
um, the time. So I think when you explain that, it can be hard as a believer of all the negative that the church was putting at that time, that was going on. So, you know, we're in a time of banning books. And so you start to look at the Bible and go, well, wow, if we're banning that book, I mean, look at all this stuff that was going on in the Bible. Shouldn't we ban this book? Not that
Right.
we should, but I think you start to see a lot of the stuff that was misused in the Bible and that was going on at that time that we do need to question, that has nothing to do with Jesus and the Gospels and his message of love and acceptance and forgiveness. So I've seen that, at least, you know, that's why they're doubling down, people, because there's a lot of pain in what they've caused. And I want them to know that, you know, I love that you said be there for the LGBTQ community if you're feeling that pain. But also, there are a lot of us that give you mercy and grace for the pain that you have caused on us. And just atoning and saying we were wrong is enough.
Totally.
And I hope the church does that more. So why didn't they change it back? I
Change.
know they did, but why do we still see it?
Yeah, and so that is based on who's publishing the Bible and why are they using certain words. They're using certain words because, again, it structures power and it puts together how they want the Bible to be interpreted, which is why they'll use virgin as opposed to young woman, which is more original to the Greek. And so there are countless examples, and a really good scholar to follow online is Dan McClellan. And
Dan
I'll give you,
McClellan.
yeah, for the show notes, but he breaks it down wonderfully as far as just how the Bible is misused for, and those little translation differences that really change the text, you know?
Yeah.
And so we would recommend the New Revised Standard Version Updated Edition, which came out in 2022 as close to the original as we can get, or at least as non-biased as we can get. And that is built of a committee from all different faith communities within the Christian community. So you've got a Catholic on the committee, and the Methodist, and a Evangelical, and a Baptist, and Protestant, all the different things. So that it's more. It's not just one-sided, where the ESV will absolutely make sure that women are submissive and, just change the language in a way.
That's propaganda.
Yeah, exactly. It's
To me. I mean, that's my
100%.
opinion. I'm not, but that's propaganda, and that's grooming. I always think it's
100%. And so, as I mentioned, we're working on a workbook discussion guide. We're going to get a little bit of a teaser out this summer for the road trip, but the full book will be ready hopefully by the end of the year. And it'll answer top questions that we couldn't put in the film. But what's a good translation to read, and why, and what translations do certain things. But Dan McClellan answers those things on his channel as well, too. And then he'll be able to lead you to other scholars. And so some of the things we want to put in our workbook as well as resources. And I can maybe hopefully be a little bit quicker at them as well. But there are a lot of different resources
And if
out
you
there. And
remember,
people
you can
talking
always
about this.
you can just send them to me and I'll put them
I
in the
will.
notes.
But it's
Now,
exciting that more people are starting to talk about this and push back and give us the resources to have the conversations we need.
what is so it's called the New Revised, what's the one that you recommend?
The New Revised Standard Version Updated Edition.
And what word are they using now instead
They
of
use
homosexual.
illicit sex amongst men, which forces the reader to ask the question, well, what's illicit and with whom? Like, what's really going on here? As opposed to just a blanket statement like a pervert or a homosexual or a
Yeah, no.
prostitute, you know?
I feel like so before 1946, was there only one Bible, the King James?
No, I mean, there were some other English versions, but they weren't like big published wide committees. They might have been like single author or different things. And I don't know how many there are. There's a lot of Bibles.
But
And
now there's
there
how many?
are tons. I mean, there are over 450 English versions alone, and that should be another clue. It's
There
like you
you
would think
go.
you would only need one English version. So it's very profitable, but it's also very powerful, and it can be used in certain ways. So that's one of the things we wanted to kind of amplify in the film is this translation history and getting people to think about what Bible we're reading and how we got our English Bibles that we have today.
Why did Yale hold on to these and not? I mean, it sounded as though you all did it wasn't investigative, but you had to really search for this.
Yeah,
Why did
it
they
was
keep them and
investigative.
not give them out?
So they are archived. The Revised Standard Version Committee that put together the first RSV, the head of the committee team was the dean of the divinity school at Yale. And so they did all the work there. And so they just kept all the archives there. And it's just part of the divinity school memories and archives. And isn't it wonderful that these archives are preserved? And there are so many more archives, and people do have access to these archives. And we think sometimes today we can Google search and find all the answers that we need. And that's not true. And so I'm so grateful to Kathy and Ed that they found the archives. Yale stored the archives and they did the digging. And I'm also so
Why did it
grateful.
take so long? I mean, 1946 to what? 2018 is when you started, when you found these?
Well, that's the thing. It's like all of these anti-LGBTQ people who are writing all these books about us, telling society how wrong we are. Nobody thought to go back and look. And as Ed points out in the film, I mean, he's finding envelopes that have been sealed since the 60s. Nobody cared enough to go back and do this research because they had all the answers that they needed. It's right there in black and white. We can say it's the homosexuals. And then that helps to have their view of the family, which is man on top, woman on bottom. It's, and child, which doesn't leave room for any other type of family. And it
They're
really
playing
is.
God. They're playing God.
Yeah.
My opinion again.
Single parents. And honestly, like it goes deeper into race issues and things like that. And so, this ideal family picture they're trying to preserve, and it excludes every other type of family.
Well, I'm not surprised because I feel, I've said this on the podcast with dance, with a lot of organizations, we're in, the exposing era of hurt and pain. And then we go to atoning, restructure, and healing. But exposing era could be 50, 100 years, and you're a part of that
Time.
exposing that people didn't want us to find, and they didn't have to find. That's what I always tell people who are, this Pride Month, friends of mine that are straight. There is privilege in being straight. You can read this book is not against you, so you can read it and just take it with a grain of salt and be like, oh, okay, this must be right because it's not going towards me.
Right.
But when you are at the effects of suffering, we seek more. And a lot of us, unfortunately, which to me is blasphemy, ironically. And when I say that is because of what they did, that's blasphemy, will cause people to turn away from God in the community. And you didn't. And at least maybe you did at times, but at least you pushed forward and found this. And thank you for doing that.
Yeah, of course.
How have evangelicals reacted to this movie?
Well, prior to the movie being released, I mean, we've had hundreds, if not thousands, of people claiming that they already know all the answers. We had somebody write a book about the movie called the 1946 Project, which you can buy on
that's
Amazon.
flattering.
I don't recommend it. It's an awful book. Kathy read it and reviewed it, but it's from a 7-minute. Well, it was a 3-minute trailer off of our website, and they mentioned us in like 7 pages, and then it was just like old copy and paste bibliographies, old, whatever. But we've had podcasts, sermons, radio shows, articles, and then that book, and YouTube videos of people like debunking our movie. Now that they can see the movie, they're still doing the videos and the debunking, but they're misrepresenting our argument wildly. And they're also, some of them are targeting and bullying Ed, calling him a coward because Ed won't debate him. Now, Ed has a master's of divinity at a theological seminary and a conservative theological seminary. And he has mad respect for the Bible, and he's very smart. But he's not, he doesn't do debates, number one. And we don't want to debate, we want a dialogue. And my response to those scholars who are theologians and or pastors who are supposed to be community leaders and representatives of their community, like, why are you picking on Ed? It's like, we've got 4 scholars in our film and other people willing to talk with you. Why don't you ever contact them? So it's just really frustrating to see the response in that really, we're going to attack you and we're right kind of way. And that's not what our film is. And that's not who we are. And we really would rather talk to somebody like Preston Sprinkle, who still doesn't believe that you can live as a homosexual. So he would be somebody you would call side B, which is still putting out harm in the world. I don't recommend Preston, but we will engage with someone like that because he is in community and he's doing the best that he can, and he does dialogue. And so we welcome different opinions and we want to continue to engage in those ways, but there's a respectful way to do it. So, but that's okay.
And I love that you're not getting involved in it because, in your defensiveness, your safety lies. Well, so when we start to go back and forth, we don't need to defend anything because
the evidence is right there. You can either see it or you don't. And there's also the evidence is in the people. And that's the point. It's like, be in relationship. Once you do that kind of work, then we can really have a conversation. But right now you just want to attack us and drag us down. And
how can we support you that believe in your project besides downloading and watching?
Well, yeah, watching the movie is a great way, but following us on social media, sharing the film, letting people know that they can see it. We also do watch parties, so you can get a group of people together and you can find out how to do that on our linked tree. Everything's on our linked tree, or you can email us, and the linked tree is on our website and on our socials at 1946 the movie. But yeah, sharing is the best way to support us, and liking and following, interacting with our content. But beyond that, getting involved with the road trip would really be instrumental right now. Whether
are you looking for volunteers at all?
People I think we have enough people. We're looking for people to help promote, and then people who might know ways to press. I'd love to get some national news on this so we can really stir things up and get people to really take a look at this information that we're putting out. And then if you can provide a meal or housing in your area or a location or a donation, we're totally would love some help in that way.
And then where does donation go to? Where do we donate, I should say?
Yeah. So there's a GoFundMe for the road trip that is also linked on our linked tree.
Okay.
So everything is on our linked tree at 1946 the movie on Instagram. You can find the linked tree. And it's in our newsletter too. It's all right there. But even if you send it to the regular GoFundMe, everything coming in right now is going to go for the road trip to get us on the road to these 14 cities to engage with the community and provide these public service conferences for the community.
That's great, especially those communities you're going to.
I know
they need it. I mean, they do, and we'll be praying for you and supporting you because you all need it. Because, like you said, somebody told me I told them I was sponsoring this film. And I won't say their name, but I'm sure they're listening. And they said, better be careful. You're dealing with the beast. And I said, And I thought they meant, we hear the beast in church all the time, the devil, Satan. And they were talking about the church.
Mm,
And I was like, and they are in the church.
yeah,
And it was very telling that and kind of dark the way it hit me.
that's pretty dark. Yeah.
And so there is a lot of, what we do, even when we do things in love and to help people, there's part in some people that don't like that and will do anything to stop it. And so that's why it's important to support this project. I do believe, like I've said, 100 years from now, they're going to be talking about this and they're going to say, why wasn't any, like, it's going to be like art, then or hey, maybe 10 years from now, but it's only going to keep getting bigger and bigger.
I would also say too, I don't think, and like David says it, this isn't going to happen overnight. David is in our film if you watch the film. And, these things do take time, and we have time, and we're ready for this is a marathon, not a sprint, but we can make a difference. We can use our voice. We can change culture. And it's just one person at a time, one church at a time.
You are.
One conversation at a time. So this isn't going to happen overnight, but Kathy, Ed, and I, and everyone else on the 1946 team are not going anywhere. So that would just kind of be an encouragement to the audience. Like if it feels like it's not happening or your parents aren't there or things like that, keep having the conversations, keep doing the work, because it will make a difference. And like you said, I hope 50 years from now, people look back and are like, why didn't this happen sooner? And now it's like a non-issue, so.
Well, and this is those, my mom went to this and she did not support my brother's us being gay. And she went to this in 2019 and it's been gradual. So I know that this contributed to that. I know it did.
That's great.
So it's gradual.
Yeah.
It is gradual. What do you have to say too? Because obviously this kind of came up especially during our time, the church really pushed the ex-gay movement. I don't even call it conversion therapy because they didn't. It was a form of that. But what do you have to say to those that are in the ex-gay movement in the church about this film, that were gay and now are saying they're not?
That's another complicated issue, and everybody's story is different. And so I don't want to assume that somebody, that their feelings aren't valid. I think that there's a lot of shame around this issue where people might say certain things because then they fit back into the community. And so I'm not 100% convinced. And I would just say, watch the film, give it a chance, and baby step, look at your own reality. Like we're asking everybody else, whatever side you're on with this, and take the information and apply it as best you can in your life and in everyone around you. And then dig deeper, look deeper, start reading more, looking at more information, listening to other people, listening to yourself, but that's really tough because we've been so stigmatized against our own existence and our own who we are. So my heart goes out to anybody who's struggling with that. And
you all have been listening to Sharon, go to one of the road tours, even if you disagree with her.
Yeah.
It is, it's welcoming to both sides. And I think at times, maybe they feel they have to believe and that we'll reject them, meaning those in the ex-gay community, the ex-gays. And, we're here. I know I've questioned, when I was younger too, I went down, I've dabbled in that thought process, I should say. So it's a safe place, not to just be who you are and ask questions and learn. And hopefully everyone gets some healing, because that's all. Everyone just wants peace, whether we all want peace. I think this might be maybe one of our last questions. How has making the documentary, doing this, how has it affected your relationship with God?
Well, I would say that my relationship with God has pretty much remained the same. And the only way that it's grown would be through the relationships that I'm making through the community of everyone all over the world, which is pretty remarkable to see how this and how God works in wonderful ways, not just in these little pieces here with the 1946 project, but all over the world. And there are gay Christians coming out all over the world. I'm just like, where did all these people come from? So it's just pretty amazing to be able to give a voice to, again, the voiceless, and to be able to provide that freedom for other people that, I've always felt fine with.
And you're going to Paris too, right? So
Yeah,
for
we're going to
the
be, for
premiering this, so
France
it is all
premiere.
over the world.
We did the Netherlands premiere in April. I just got back from Singapore. We're now working on the Chinese dialects to do Taiwan and Hong Kong in October for Taiwan Pride. Then we're going to fly to Hong Kong. We're going to do, let's see, what else are we working on? We're trying to get it in Portuguese and in Spanish, but we definitely have a team doing Korean right now, and we have a team doing the Japanese right now. So we've got some Asian countries covered, which is incredible. We'd love to do more. Yeah, just one help at a time. So really, this whole process with making a movie like this, as you see, if you guys watch the credits, all the people that helped us make this movie, not just with donations, but volunteering, and then our paid technicians and different things like that. But now in this impact campaign, it's still either time or money. Everything takes resources to produce, but we've had people showing up, and there are teams doing the translations for us. And so then they give us the file, and then we do need to then pay to put it into the movie file, which is way cheaper than if we had to do both of the assets. And so it's just wonderful to see teams popping up and then being able to go and engage in person with the communities. So one country at a time, we're just going to keep moving. But we're also, again, very committed to our homeland, our home country, and the United States, and understanding that this Western reality of Christianity kind of does seep out into other cultures.
Yeah.
And so it started here. Let's fix it.
How do, because I know some, affirming pastors, they want this played in their church. How do they go about in getting it played in their church?
Send us an email, 1946themovieinfo@gmail.com. I can send you all the information. Or again, on our linked tree has a ton of different links with information. And the linked tree, you'll look down and it says share 1946 with your community. That's the link you're going to want to hit. And it gives you all the information and the resources you need to set up your own watch party.
I love that. And it even got me thinking, obviously LA is very accepting of the LGBTQ community, but in doing one.
And
but
I'm
I think
here.
what's good about it too is a lot of people in the gay community have turned away from God because they think it's maybe Jesus and Christianity. So this is even another bridge outside of that to bring people back and say, hey, no, there's nothing wrong. Not that we're downplaying the pain that it caused.
Right.
But, there's a lot of other great lessons you can learn. I always say that Jesus has gotten hijacked,
totally.
and turned in, and that has, which is sad because he's had a lot of great lessons and helped me a lot, and I'm sure you a lot. So, well, thank you I know you helped a lot of people being on this podcast, and everyone just, have a really good, safe Pride Month. This is the end of the month. And, ask God, have him show you. This is one of the ways to show you by watching 1946. But God will be there for you if you're questioning anything. And one final question. What's the boldest thing you've done, Sharon?
Besides challenging Christianity globally? I don't know. That might be it, John. Yeah.
Is that it?
Like you said, the beast. I think so. It's just like, I've always been the one to stand up for the underdog on the playground. I didn't know that I'd be standing up for our queer brothers and sisters globally and taking on the church. So There you go. That's my boldest move, I would have to say.
That's pretty bold, and keep doing it. Keep
Thanks.
being it. And we support you and we support the film.
Thank you. I appreciate you. It was so awesome to talk with you.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you so much for listening to Dance Dad with John Corella. Thank you to everyone at Hivecast for all that you do. And if this episode meant something to you, please share it and subscribe. Also, you can follow Dance Dad with John Corella on all platforms. But most importantly, remember to be bold and be fierce.